on this kind of a unique panel where we're going to give you perspective of those that have worked with us at DIU from both the customer, DoD customer side and industry side. So you got to get both perspectives of what it's like to work with DIU. But before we begin, I do want to give you all kind of a level set of who we are and what we do as a DoD OSD organization. Should I introduce all of you? Would that be helpful?
Up to you.
I'll introduce everybody just so you know who you're getting to hang out with for the next hour. To my left here is Johnson Wu. He is commercial engagements for the cyber portfolio, and many of you that are standing in the audience that work for a non-traditional commercial company, he wants to know who you are and what you have to offer. Next to him is Jonathan Rogers. He is a Navy officer, cyber warfare, and he is a program manager in the cyber portfolio. Just trying to think of, and he is the PM for the projects we're going to discuss today. Next to him is a Mr. Justin Fanelli, who probably doesn't need an introduction into this audience. But are you Navy's?
DoN?
Yeah, Navy. Department of Navy. CTO.
And Technical Director,
yes,
PO Digital.
Thank you. And a frequent flyer with DIU. And next to him is Ian Callan from Turbine One, and who was a partner for Jonathan's project, or continues to be a partner. So without further ado, it's right in front of me. Who's DIU and what do we do? Our mission, like I mentioned, we are a fully funded OSD office made up of civilians, military members, and contract support. Our main focus and goal is to accelerate the DoD's adoption of commercial technology, speed and scale, to deter conflict, and then to win if forced to fight. So think of us as our lane is really that commercial technology, non-traditional, and that's where our focus is. So if you kind of keep that lens as we go through, it's helpful. I think we all know this story. We just can't afford to fall behind. And many of us in the military are daily using technology that is far outdated. And really, in order for us to meet that mission, if forced to fight and win, we need better technology. When DIU first started, the genesis behind it was this realization that industry was making investments into their own products and into the market at a far greater amount than the DoD was. And what we want to do is to be able to leverage that investment in technology that industry's making, because it saves us on tax dollars, frankly, and it moves a heck of a lot faster than we do. Additionally, we want to be able to leverage the sustainment of products that the market does versus having to be reliant on the military for that sustainment of products. Here you're just going to see we are still a main investor for a number of different technology spaces. Here's our business model. I'll touch on it a little bit more, and this is kind of what folks want to know about us, is how do we work with you as a DoD customer and how do we work with you as industry? We are the ones that are going to hear your problems, figure out if there's a market and a commercial product line that can support your problem, and then we're going to facilitate the prototyping of that product on behalf of a DoD customer. So we kind of sit in between the two. We're made up of, like I mentioned, someone like Johnson, who has a rich and deep commercial background and a network that just puts us all to shame. It's incredible how many people he knows. Married with and together with people like myself and Jonathan, who understand the context in which we fight in and our military problem sets. So we speak militaries, Johnson speaks commercialies, and together we can address rapidly the problems the DoD is facing. A lot of you have heard, in fact, I think I got Ian kind of hit me up as this panel was starting, is like, well, it seems like DIU is changing. You got all this money in the budget. How is that affecting your ability to do what you do, which traditionally has been, again, that rapid prototyping and delivering and scaling of commercial technology. I will say this. It hasn't changed what we do. It has just changed the level in which we do it at. And what I mean by that is, when we first started, we were like any scrappy startup. Man, you had a problem, you needed, new light bulbs. We got it, right? We just wanted to help and get our name out there and do whatever we could to speed up those timelines, get stuff into the hands of the warfighter faster. As we grew, we started to build partnerships, leverage. Today, we are proud to say that we are an integrated partner with U.S. Cyber Command and the J9 and the J8 and the J3. We are right there with them, advising and supporting them. Now we're into DIU 3.0, and with that came a vote of confidence from Congress in the tune of a lot of money, and it also started to really hone our focus in on what are the toughest problems facing the DoD today. Where those toughest problems are, that's where DIU wants to be. So, we've gone from buying light bulbs right now, right, to buying Internet of Space, buying the integrated hunt kits that are going to serve the entire market, or DoD space for those. So more strategic, toughest problems. I don't think there's more I could say about that. This is a little bit more of what I just said. Although I will add, we've added to our workload, if you will, in that we're now putting our arms around the entire DoD innovation ecosystem, which I think is helpful to all of you, frankly, and creating some foundation and some tools and things like that to better serve our industry partners and our DoD partners. So there's now a focus on that. Ensign, many of you may know about, perhaps not know about, and NSIC. We're always kind of considered part of the DIU family, maybe a cousin. Now they are DIU. So you see this way of forging new pathways and, again, strategically working at policy to enable commercial tech to better serve us. I'm going to skip right through this, but this kind of now shows that inclusion of Ensign and NSIC within the DIU portfolio. They're more on the talent concept development side of the house. DIU that most of you are familiar with, we're on the prototyping, production, and scaling side of the house, but now we're all big one family. Same message here. We address all of our domains, technology areas, and how we do it. Things just like this. There we go. These are our portfolio areas. I will say DIU is an extremely flat organization. We're pretty small while mighty. And I think I was explaining to somebody who came up to our table, he says, I have an AI problem. I said, great. My job is to introduce you to the AI portfolio, right? We're going to bring you in and then we're going to get you to the right SMEs. And now I think we would all agree that the lines between these portfolios have really begun to blur, right? Cyber hits everywhere. We're using space across all of these portfolios. So we work very closely and work together within the organization. Specifically, you're here talking and listening to the cyber portfolio. We everywhere from OCO and DCO to IT modernization and networks. We specifically received some funding to do 5G work, so we've got the team focused on that as well. But as you can see, this is kind of our lane as we define it. All right. There we go. Just some interesting statistics here, but we are very proud of the fact that we've transitioned 62 prototypes into the operational environment. For that's our end goal, right? It doesn't do any of us good to discover something cool, prototype it, test it, love it, and then do nothing with it. It doesn't help you, it doesn't help us. So we really pride ourselves on that transition. In an effort to keep with time here, this is really how we do the business. So I've kind of said, what do we do? Why do we do it? This is how we do it. And our partners at the table will touch on a little bit of their experience of this process. But it no different than many of the other DoD organizations represented here at this conference. We have OT authority. What's the so what about that? The so what is the process we have developed to execute OT prototype awards. This process is geared literally to our non-traditional industry members to get them to work with us. We recognize that the days of asking a company that is fighting for funding, fighting for survival, fighting for market, asking them to write a 300-page proposal with a video and a demo and all of that, it's that barrier is way too high. So we've lowered that barrier to entry. In order to play with us, literally all we ask of you is a 5-page white paper or a 15-slide deck. The way you work with us is you get onto DIU.mil and you sign up for our newsletter, and that signs you up as well for our solicitations. We don't put out a ton a year. I think last year it said we put out 90. And they're all about a page long, right? Our solicitations, we don't want to ask industry to spend, days and weeks and months just trying to interpret what we're asking for. We want to get plain and simple, this is the problem, please go help us solve it. So once those solicitations are out on the street, they're not out there for long. We just ask that you hit that 5-page limit and the 15 deck. Phase 1, we down select to a few companies that we think have a prototype that would meet our need. And then we move into phase 2, which is merely in-person pitches. From there, we make a down select and to award. Because it's OT, we're using business terms and conditions, commercial terms and conditions, making it more advantageous for industry to work with us. We as a cyber portfolio pride ourselves on how quickly we can move this process, on average at 60 to 90 days. And we then, at that point, our DoD customer is with us the entire time. It's their money, it's their work, it's what they care about. They'll help us make those selections, and then they'll test the products. And if your product meets what we asked you to do, you get what's called a success memo at the end. And this is the real differentiator. Thank you, Johnson. Is that letter, that success memo is essentially your license to hunt. That's a sole source justification for your product, your prototype that you brought through that can be used by any agency to let either a OT production contract or a FAR-based production contract. So that's huge. It just means you went through your full and open and you don't need to do it again. So if you can then find customers, they can use that and put you straight on contract. So I know I flew through all of that, but I think these guys are far more interesting to listen to than me. But I hope this gives you a good understanding of who we are and what we do, and the context for now in which to listen. I'm going to turn it over to you.
So before we pass the mic to Justin, maybe allow me to do a little bit of a lead in with some historical context here. So DIU cyber portfolio started officially working with Department of Navy about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And we embarked on a very experimental project, multi-layered security using blockchain with Justin's team. And Michael's here. Thanks for coming. And at the time, it was DIU 2.0. And we were sticking to the formula of customer, come to us with a problem, come to us with the pilot funding, let us do a few works of due diligence to survey the market and run the solicitation for you, work with you to do the down select, do the contract negotiation, and also, so John did all the work for the DIU cyber portfolio for that particular project. We also worked with Department of Navy, not as both sponsor and user, but as user for NIWC PAC on a tracking aerospace assets project. We're going to talk with Ian on that later. But as DIU 2.0 evolves into DIU 3.0, we also found some, I would say, collaborative opportunities where DIU can utilize some of our plus-ups in funding to now finally participate, not just purely as the transactor, but also as limited sponsors in some projects. And in talking to Justin, we found that we really do coincide, work well with their different horizons and also structured challenges. I'm going to hand it over to Justin, Department of Navy Acting CTO and PEO Digital Tech Director, to talk a little bit about, let's start with the horizons.
Hey, good morning, Patriots. People sometimes ask why I have two jobs. I think everyone has two jobs, so I think it's a funny question. But in this particular case, Program Executive Office, so acquisition, we need to buy stuff, but we need to deliver wins. And then the CTO shop is, hey, what is the strategy? How do things come together, connect? So fairly natural marriage. That 13 months has gone by really quickly. Partnerships matter when speed matters. DIU's been a really good partner. So a little background here is conventional approach to warfare and conventional approach to acquisition. They have their place. But I think there are some people here who want to see changes, right? Can we see a raise of hands if you'd like to see changes in general? And then I'm going to call on you if you don't raise your hand. So we're recognizing that in general, we have a couple hypotheses, but they need more data. One hypothesis is that speed matters more than it used to, and we have the ability to move faster. That's a hypothesis. We haven't proven that yet. There are a couple cases in the world right now where we're showing, hey, we're starting to, but not everyone's convinced, and we're not done until people are convinced and we have the evidence to put them to bed. Next is from a change, the not just speed, but ability to change the way that we operate. So adaptability has been huge in Ukraine, huge in the Red Sea, and presumably huge within the Davidson window in the South China Sea, right? So what I expect, and just walking through the hall, is that we have a lot of companies that either haven't sold a lot or haven't sold a lot to the government in a traditional way. We want to be less traditional. The partnership in this public-private era is that not everyone in the system knows how to buy differently, and buying isn't the goal. And a license to hunt is really important, but we want kills. We don't want just hunting, right? And so what we'd like to buy is not tech, it's wins. If we all believe that this is a case that we can prove with evidence, then we need to do that together. For the most part, I kind of think, and this is maybe controversial, but I kind of think like we've gotten further than we've gotten before in terms of, hey, Congress dared DIU. Hey, you said you can move faster? Here's the money. Make it happen. We have PEOs who are lined up and saying, hey, we want to make outcome-based decisions. We are going to make decisions based on data. Is it real? And so at this point, there's two questions. One is, do we mean it? And then two is, do we have the partners who can make that real, right? And so we think we mean it, but I think I'm good at football. You'll find out on the field, right? And we need you as much or more than you need us to make that happen. So we wanted to set up a landscape, set up a field so that people can prove this out. We wanted to make it simple so it scales. This is why we're talking to the Army and the Air Force. This is why yesterday at the CDAO, they were like, oh, how do we transparently share across the horizons? Yep, that's the question. Let's simplify language so that we can move out. So Horizon 3, 2, 1, 0. 1 is production, everything in sustainment. That's the good stuff, and that's the tech debt. 2 is pilots. That's across organizations. We're piloting cyber to do this. Oh, so are we. Do you have a different problem? No, it's about 80% the same. We should either talk or figure out how to work together. Horizon 3 is scouting. DIU does that as well as almost anybody. How do we go from 3 to 2 to 1? We need to divest things. Divestment is Horizon 0. If we just keep putting cars in the same garage, we're not going to be able to pull any out, right? We already have too much stuff in there. So everyone who is working with us has to put an eye on what can we turn off so that we can buy more wins in a sustainable way. Everyone has bet us that we can't make a big enough difference. I think they're rooting for us, at least some of them. We need overwhelming evidence by all of our partners to show that this works. And so that's the funnel. When you move from 3 to 2, licensed to hunt, and 2 to 1 in production, you're not just getting a program of record, you're getting an opportunity to change lives at scale, save lives, secure the United States. Like, we want to show at every step of the way that there is outcomes overmatch, and we need data to do that. Because even if we like you, it doesn't matter. Like being my friend doesn't actually buy you anything. Being Michael's friend actually is a drawback. But if we have data, then we can tell people that, and it has legs. So that's 3, 2, 1, 0.
So in terms of DIU collaboration with Department of Navy, do you see us being more of a co-sponsor in Horizon 3 where you might be short of funds and leveraging PEO Digital on the back end for transition? Or will you maintain the same, I would say, investment, still investing in Horizons 3 and 2?
Yep. So right now, in general, like before we talked about these with like kind of standard language, Horizon 3 existed kind of. People were doing S&T and people were doing IRAD, and that's as strong as kind of relationships, and I know that guy and I'm going to try and transition. So we didn't really have like a formal way to do that. By putting the Horizon 3 activities on target for Horizon 1 and using the outcome metrics to measure that, we now have a better sense of what's there. So first and foremost, Claire said it, we have more that we're looking at in Horizon 3, and cyber's everywhere. So as a baseline, like facilitating that ecosystem, nurturing that ecosystem is something that you have more arms and legs and brains to do than we do. And so that's beautiful because you're manicuring and saying, hey, here's the best stuff. Our Horizon 3 in the 2 PEOs of the 5 that I work with most is almost non-existent. And so by having that seeding in there, it has the opportunity to say, hey, this is something that might be good if a rose grows in concrete. We see those every once in a while, but it's not a garden, right? The idea of letting that stuff flourish is now fully dependent on this and a couple other partnerships. So that's the answer there. And then in Horizon 2, because we're getting wins, we're going to get more Horizon 2 money. So we're as good as the proof case. there's no intention. It's we tell a story with data, and then people double down. So we saw that with AppFit. I think we're going to see that or not see that with all of these efforts. So we could talk specifics, but we are going to double down insofar as the proof we have that this relationship is working, and I think it is.
Sure.
You want to repeat that?
So, how do we see the Department of Navy using DIU with FY24 money? Is that the question? So I don't want to jinx it, but we have a lot of things in the works, in particular in fieldable next generation communications use case. I would say heavily biased on Indo-PACOM and NIWC PAC. DIU will be using FY24, the plus-up allocations, on very, very selected projects where we see, number one, there is an urgent need. Number two, there is a very, very short runway to actually fielding. And number three, it's up to you guys. There's PEO digital back-end support. If we field the early fielding, are you going to come in with sustainment money on the back end to support it? And guess what? We're going to put Ian on the spot in about like 15, 20 minutes to talk a little bit about specific projects. Cool.
All right.
Next up.
Yeah, good question. So we're going to show them pre-conference. So they're online right now. Almost everything in here is either a Agile Center design concept that we've signed out at the department level, so ACDCs, and they're all part of the innovation adoption kit. I think he's just really photogenic. Did you see where the camera was pointed? Okay, so on structured challenges, I want to get to Ian. So the idea of structured challenges are, hey, we had a lot of shots on goal. Are we aiming at the same goal? So there are build-a-thons, there are hackathons. How are we kind of totaling those up? Or what structure are we using around those? Just like we're structured pilots, where we said, hey, how many pilots do we do a year? I don't know. Looks like we did 3 last year. Let's do a lot more than that and figure out what the return on investment, the value on investment is. So we did 21, and then we showed here are the 11 that transition, and here are the 10 that we should either kill or figure out how to send somewhere else, transition, or do something else with. So similarly, a year after the structured piloting, we're doing structured challenges to say, how do we get the most out of this, and how do we corral those? Just like with piloting, I expected that we'd get 3, 4, 5 entries. We have 22 entries in a month. And we're not going to run all of those centrally, but we want to at least report out wins and figure out who is the most fun to be friends with, because we have an extra slot available.
So how do you measure the progress of your structured piloting?
Same way we measure everything, which is wins. So the closer we can get to Moneyball, the clearer that we know how we're doing, DIU knows how they're doing, and the private sector knows how they're doing. So in the digital era, we're using not industrial age metrics, but digital era metrics, which are outcome-driven metrics in this particular case, using data to drive decisions. Everyone knows KPIs, KPPs. They still matter. They're predominantly operational. What do they roll up to? So we measure thousands of things. How much are they moving the needle? These 5 move the needle in terms of the ability for our warfighters to work effectively and to get what they need done. So the 5 up there, these are outcome-driven metrics. We call them WAMs, world-class alignment metrics. We want to measure ourselves against other agencies. I just saw Winston Beauchamp. He might be around still. The Deputy CIO of the Air Force. We want to compete with our friends. We also want to compete worldwide across the private sector. How quickly can we deliver and change, as well as adversaries? So this is the idea of trying to measure ourselves against our past selves, and how do we get best. It's also the way that we measure pilots and structured challenges for whether they're in. So how do I go from 3 to 2? Show that you make a bigger impact. Again, when we did a cattle call for how many pilot ideas do we have, we thought we'd get 20 or 30. We got 150. We didn't have money for 150. We had money for probably 10. We showed the impact of the 150, and they said, oh, we have to pay for more than that. So we got funding for 21. And then based on that 21, we've started transitioning a lot of those earlier than we expected. And then some are hanging out there, and we have to pressure the portfolios and the operators to make sure that tech-informed concept of operations are the right way to think about this. But point is, the pressure's earlier and further down the funnel. That's how we measure.
You want to elaborate a little bit on WAM?
Yep.
Before we close?
Doing it at a high level, it can be ethereal, and it results in a lot of conversations. We like talking, but we like winning more than talking, so we want the data to do the talking. The idea is these break down to what we call outcome-driven metrics, mission outcome-driven metrics, technical outcome-driven metrics, and operational metrics. Point is this. We don't want this to be subjective. We want it to be as objective and data-driven as possible so that you can show we are making a difference. The cost per user is the one we get the most flack on. If we add another cyber tool, does it make us more secure? Can we turn anything off? We get no points for being more cybery. We do get more points for being able to adapt faster and to be more resilient. That is the purpose of our cyber investments. If we can't tell that story, then no one can. So we are relying on our partners to do that.
We have a heckler.
Yep. So the question was leading versus lagging indicators. We want to be able to, so we call them WAMs forward and WAM backwards. So forward is predominantly projections or based on historicals. So how well will I do on your network? Well, if you're a startup, then you're probably just estimating. If you have other customers, you can say, hey, we met with someone the other day, and I said, how much better are you making the system you're working with? Like 30%? And they're like, 10 times better. You're making it 1,000% better? Yeah, provably so. Oh, why wouldn't we use this everywhere? That's our question for you. Okay, that is a projected. Do we spend $100 million on that? Probably not, because the use case is different. So we spent $1 million on that. They showed their value on investment within 6 months, and now we want to scale that out and divest accordingly. That's the leading turning into a lagging. Leading gets you in the door. We like hard data, but we also want new entrants. And then the lagging is, if you can't prove it, if it just wasn't the right match, then we have to go our own separate ways as quickly as possible or adjust accordingly.
So with that, I think it's time to pivot to a sample project where both the leading indicator was controversial but very interesting, and the lagging indicator was extremely positive. I'm going to punt this to Jonathan to talk about the project overview first before going
Perfect.
to Ian.
Yeah, I'll touch really quickly, doing a bird's eye view, and then I'll hand it off to Ian. What's that? Oh, microphone. There we go. There we go. I'll give the bird's eye view and hand over to Ian, who is a performer on this project. But tracking aerospace ground equipment, as you might imagine, most flight lines, DoD flight lines, are using pen and paper to track assets. Which, I mean, I don't think I need to say why that's not doing the job in the modern age. And so the idea was working with OUSD RNE 5G as well as NIWC PAC to bring a more modern solution. Pen and paper has to go. So the envisioned solution from a DoD perspective was actually using physical hardware trackers, so trackers that are attached to these important pieces of assets, and being able to provide that live location data. And part of the beauty of DIU and how we do solicitations, we didn't prescribe the solution, we described the problem. And so we described what the problem was and tracking those aerospace ground equipment across flight lines. And we got numerous solutions, including hardware, physical hardware trackers, and some of the performers were physical hardware trackers. But we also got a response from Ian and Turbine 1, which is using AI to track those assets, which is not something that necessarily the DoD envisioned originally, but was a compelling solution. And as a result, we brought Ian on to track assets across Naval Air Station Whidbey Island, and later expanded to Lulule, but leveraging existing cameras on flight lines, as well as introducing new sensors, enabling tracking airspace ground equipment, then also leveraging the exact same solution to do more than just track airspace ground equipment, using those same cameras, same solution, also providing physical intrusion detection, as well as pattern of life analysis, and all this other great solutions for the DoD. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ian to dive more into it.
Thanks, John. I'm going to stand because I don't sit still very well. First of all, I'll just introduce myself and I'll tell a little story. So my name's Ian Kalin. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Turbine One. And it's a great honor to be even up here with DIU and Justin and folks, because I saw this basically the exact same panel about a year ago from these chairs. It was in Hawaii that time, and I thought to myself, as a small business owner, man, wouldn't it be incredible if I could be up there someday and tell a story about what we've done? And lo and behold, at the speed of DIU, I went from your chair to being up here in less than a year. So it can happen. I'm going to tell you a story a little bit about how we got to that journey, and to tell a little success story about what we've been able to see and learn so far. So my company, Turbine One, we deliver frontline intelligence. This is a little bit of a story of what I suffered through and observed back when I was in the Navy. I did some maritime interdiction operations in uniform a few years back, and I wish I had better intelligence when I used to work at the front. So that's what Turbine One does now, is deliver more actionable intelligence to those that are working and serving at our nation's front lines, including all these wonderful robots that are serving out there as well. How do you get better actionable intelligence to those that are at that tactical edge? That's what our company is all about. So this is the pain point, if you would. Way too much data, way too many sensors, way too many lines of ISR, not enough eyeballs or responsible decision makers be able to process that information and make more informed decisions and achieve that decision advantage. So our solution to that, next slide.
I
do it here.
Sorry, yeah. Let's just give me the next one.
It's way off on the logistics. Hi. Our solution to that is listed here. We're a software company. We deliver the frontline perception system. I won't go through the full story or a proper demo. I'm a tech geek, and I wish I could, but in just one slide, we enable that actionable intelligence through the following features. First of all, very simple. So simple, a general can make their own machine learning models, heaven forbid. If it's just that damn simple, what could you do with this? That's number one. Number two, we're edge first. No cloud, no problem, which is a bit odd, frankly, from the larger ecosystem of AI and wonderful machine learning companies that are here and work all throughout the commercial ecosystem. And number three, hardware interoperable. Keep your own gear. No new gear, no problem. And that feature is what allowed our small business to connect in with the project here at Naval Air Station Whidbey. I'm going to kind of add a little bit to the story that John just told, because at that station, where the Navy considers one of their great beachheads and anchors of electronic warfare capabilities, and it's an air station, it's an airfield, lots of fancy aircraft doing lots of fancy things. They don't have a fence line at that wonderful base, and this is not a very good one. And as John was saying, even at the kind of the stark reality of systems from a different decade, keeping track of aerospace ground equipment, AGE, or just assets, was being done with pen and paper. And sometimes it rains up there in the Pacific Northwest, and so they were having some frustrations with how to keep track of equipment while also looking at some of the, we'll call it the operational needs of that base. So I was not at the beginning of the project. The story I'm about to tell, I'm like chapter 5. I don't know what happened in the beginning. I do not know what's going to happen at the end, but our little sliver was kind of interesting. Because as John was saying, they basically brought in some wonderful hardware companies. They did wonderful things. I do not know how that functioned, but apparently it didn't quite meet the objective of what that base commander was seeking, which is basically to automate something that's pen and paper, keeping track of stuff. They couldn't find their gear. The classic, I'm looking at the looks on some of these faces of the folks in the crowd here now. You may not realize this, but the way the Navy does asset allocation, you need a ladder, you need a tow truck, you need a special vehicle. It's basically lent out to a bunch of different air wings. You may or may not get that equipment back. And if you do, it may not be in the same condition. And so just trying to get a better wrangle on that tracking of equipment, we were brought in as a software company to help supercharge the hardware that was already there. This is basically a story of a pivot of that air station, a pivot enabled by DIU and the extraordinary commercial, operational, technical capabilities like Johnson's going to share for how to adapt to the evolving needs.
So if I may add to that, sorry to interrupt.
Please.
So the leading indicator of their proposal was it's interesting but controversial. So what we did is, it's part of the DIU playbook, was we put Ian's company on the portal. So initially, they did not advance to phase 3. But it was in the portal, because in the back of our minds, both John, myself, and the customer at NIWC PAC, we're all thinking that there has to be something. We got a hunch that we will need something outside of the asset tags to complete this solution. And sure enough, during the first phases of the rollout of the asset tags, we realized, computer imagery, computer vision is needed. Bring Ian in since we have some residual funding. And sure enough, it turned into a great thing because Ian's capability turned into the star of the show at the end.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for saying that. But to be clear, just to add to that story, for those of you that have ever, how many of you have ever submitted a proposal to a DIU open solicitation? A few? Okay, so I was rejected, but then now I'm here, right?
Portal.
Portal.
All right. Portal, not rejected.
Stalled. Waitlisted. I don't know how you say that. But that's amazing, right? That's not normal for government contracting. That's not normal for an RFP process. And that's what's part of what makes working with DIU so incredible. There's many things about DIU that as a witness and as a frontline experience, as a partner with this program, should be elevated. First of all, the technical talent of the staff, those working in the cyber AI different portfolios, like John, like Johnson, that's not normal. It's incredibly impressive to see how savvy they are on commercial capabilities. And then to have the structural capabilities to adapt as the requirements evolve to say, actually, less of this company, more of this, and then still provide that end solution, that impact to the end user. That's also amazing. That is not, in my experience, having been a senior acquisition official myself, having worked in government, I was desperate for the kind of capabilities that DIU works on every day. And so back to the story of Naval Air Station Whidbey, once they realized, hey, these tags, for whatever reason, are not working, can another software provider supercharge the sensors, supercharge the cameras that are already on base, and help these folks keep track of what they're looking for? Sure enough, first pivot, the answer is yes, and we're proud to say that with a great letter of support from the commanding officer of that base, we are helping automate the aerospace ground equipment, the asset tracking of that base. Here's the second pivot, though, that's amazing in that story with Naval Air Station Whidbey and DIU. They basically said, hey, those cameras that are looking down, what if you look up? Look at the fence line. Look at the airfield. Look at just the azimuth, if you would, of what else could be a threat or something of interest, the object of interest for that base. And when we said, well, if a child can make their own machine learning models, if you, the warfighter, can build your own toolkit, maybe we can look for other dangerous things too, or just other important things too. And that's exactly what's happening in Naval Air Station Whidbey, where the very same software platform is not just doing asset tracking in a physical equipment sense. They're also looking for intrusions of people, of drones, bad guys doing bad things. That is now it's delivered as a capability set to those folks, and they're realizing, wow, computer vision, machine learning, it is actually a very scalable, extensible asset that can be expanded into a number of different use cases. So expeditionary base security, the force protection side, it's adding to that threat detection, and even some of the autonomous craft systems of interest. And as briefly mentioned by John, that success for us as a small business is very motivating. It's incredible as we've expanded beyond Naval Air Station Whidbey, also to Hawaii with NIWC PAC support and wonderful partnership to take the very same capability and extend it out at one of the strategic communication stations, Lu'u'u'alei, which I can never pronounce very well, but I think I said it closely right.
Can I highlight something there? So it may be hard to identify or imagine a scenario where the government has imperfect, detailed requirements, and you'd need to make changes during. But as best as I've heard, this wasn't Ian pinging the hell out of them. He came in with overmatch outcomes at the beginning and an imperfect fit, which meant catalog them. And then when they figured out that, this could be the pivot that we need, he was in the game because of data and superior delivery, and then we made that change. That's the power of that partnership. Often we've seen, hey, we need to rewrite the requirement. Okay, 3 years. We need to recompete a contract. Okay, 2 years might not happen. That piece of distinguishing yourself up front, we're going to write more top-level requirements with OpNav and others, but if you can show that, we can pivot. There's more to grab for those pivots.
Yeah, so in closing from my side, I completely agree with what Justin said on the requirement. There is a chicken and the egg, of course, in the requirements game. The folks at the front did not know to ask for field tunable machine learning where I can code it, build it myself, deliver no code, and find anything I'm looking for. If the warfighters didn't know that existed as a scientific patentable invention, so it could not have been a requirement, right?
Yeah, I think I'll just the reason that we're able to do that is because DIU is not interested in your requirements. We want to know your problem. So when we write our solicitation, we write it as a problem. Because to your point, we don't know what might end up being the technology that we need. And also, we look to industry to say to us, hey, if that's your problem, I have a technology, a capability that I think might help. And that's one of the beauties of DIU is we've been able to bring in companies that serve a completely different market. But because we offered it up as a problem versus a set of requirements, they were able to respond.
And that can get you in. The staying power is related to turning something else off often. So if you can paperclip, here's the problem we're solving, we kick its ass, and here are the things that we can allocate long-term money to instead of this other thing, like that gets us a trajectory that is sustainable.
And I know that every once in a while you might see a DIU solicitation that is extremely prescriptive, but I can say that is not normal. We have to abide by the golden rule of the customer is always right, but I can assure you that would be probably less than 1/10 of our solicitations. So let's, we still have some time left. Should we open the floor for hecklers, comments, rotten tomatoes, rotten eggs?
I have a question for you guys. Oh, go ahead.
Do you have to have a government sponsor come to you with a problem for you to put out a CSO? Yeah. Or can you put out a CSO on your own, soliciting a problem that needs to be solved that you know?
So I would say 5 months ago, we had to have a sponsor, right? Because we use OPM, other people's money. So we had to have a sponsor. Now that we have our own money, we are seeing a couple CSOs go out that do not have a distinct DoD sponsor with them. We are exploring a technology area. We are enticing the market to move in a place that we need it to support us. But I will say that the majority of our solicitations that go out have a DoD partner because honestly, we are a small organization. We need their expertise at the evaluation table with us. We don't have our own testability, so we rely on our DoD customers provide that as well. And if our goal is to transition, we need somebody there to catch it. So yeah, I would say that is ideal. That's what we want. But you will see a couple of solicitations that are going out right about now that may not have a
financial sponsor,
right? Or a particular unit that is the sponsor. So HSA is probably a good example.
Staying power is very important. I think back in the day with DIU 2.0, sun, moon, stars have to align. Money, whether you can test the capability, and whether there's a back end to finance the production transition. Right now, with DIU 3.0, I would say we're our partners are off the hook sometimes on the financial side, at least for the pilot. But in terms of the capability to test and the capability of and the commitment to transition to production, if the capability were to prove successful, is very important. And that's what distinguishes DIU from a lot of the experimentation like SIBRs and SITRs, where we are very serious about who's on the back end, who's going to support it. And that's why I always harass Justin, hey, if we do this, will PEO Digital be on the back end to support the transition? Are you going to be able to grab onto the group of users that's doing the experimentation, the pilot? Are they going to transition and continue to use it? Are you ready to palm funds when the prototype period wraps up? Are you going to put money into transitioning it?
And he's skilled. He's skilled at harassment, but not as good as someone in uniform who is begging us for it. And so if you bring them and they are begging, like we can't, when I think about the transitions that have gone really well, we have a captain or a commander who is like, we need this. I've told my friends about shit. Now we have to explain to all these people that we're going to leave the old stuff in, like the business case plus divestments plus an operational sponsor who won't quit calling, make it too good to ignore.
I guess I would. Is that on? I don't. I would add that you can't have one without the other, and I think that DIU's goal is not to say one is better or that we just brute force through operationally versus deliberate planning through acquisition. Right? We need to do better, but we need to That's I think DIU is looking to do that too. Is that partnership? Let us reduce risk. Let us move very quickly in response to an operational problem. And then, hey, acquirers, come along with us and pick the ball up and take it to the finish line. And that's the way I look at it, is we might start running, but we need somebody to ditch it off to so they can take it to the finish line.
One more aspect of transition and sustainment that I think is important, just from the voice of industry. I thought DIU had a great brand until I started working with them and realized just how famous you all are. Across the DoD, to say that you are working with DIU is a risk mitigating transformative statement. It's amazing, and I think poor John is seeing this by the number of folks like, oh my gosh, you're working with DIU? Please, can I work with them too? Can I do a change order? Can I do this? Can I work with this person? Can I get this person on the phone? Because frankly, the DIU impact is so famous, and congratulations on that success. Even Congress is recognizing it. So that in the world of acquisitions, it's really just a world of managing risk. And so to be able to have any sort of accelerator or translator or some credibility to be able to say, this has actually got a great team behind it, to have DIU as part of that story as a small business owner, I got to say, is extraordinarily transformative. And so for anyone else that has not yet worked with DIU from either the government side, I think they're probably knocking down your doors, or even from the industry side, I'm here to pay witness to just how much of a personal change I've seen in my own life and my company by being able to share more of the DIU story. It has extraordinary impact on other transition potential.
To that point, sometimes email is not good enough, so if anyone needs Johnson's cell phone number, personal, we're happy to provide it. Just carrying Claire's analogy, like if DIU is the quarterback and the PEOs are the receiver, like we want you to help us prove that we can catch. We want to catch. We don't want old footballs. We don't want deflated footballs. It's a quarterback era. Trent Dilfer, sorry, Baltimore, but like Trent Dilfer wouldn't win a Super Bowl right now. Flacco would. Brady has the most. Ben Roethlisberger has a few. But we want to work with the best quarterbacks, and we want to score touchdowns by proving that we can catch. And so the vendors are the footballs. Like, this can be a whole new deal. The question earlier, the Innovation Adoption Kit, some of those translation tools to make sure they get to the PEO, they're on the DoN CIO website, PEO Digital website, LinkedIn, a few places. We want to make those really available.
Cool. Let's see. We have time for one more question, and we'll wrap. Yes. Are we at liberty to talk about the FY24 spends?
We're really not. But I will say, I mean, we're at the same mercy in demand as every other DoD organization that got 24 money, right? It's 2-year money, and we self-impose a 1-year rule of spending it, and so yes, there's a mad sprint to just like everybody is. Justin and his team is doing that mad sprint as well, and so is Cyber Command. And but as for what our priorities are, I am unfortunately not at liberty to discuss those right now. But they are the priorities of the warfighter. I say that, but I mean it. I definitely, we are working hand in hand.
I'd offer if you crush a goal, like so if you use, for instance, the WAMs to show that you are making a huge impact, it's harder to ignore that. So good, like what do we want? Like, hey, fusion, but if you can do something little, way better, it's just going to be harder to ignore. And then like on the expenditure, we spent all of our money early so that we can be in the position to say, hey, we have to justify spending more money or other people's money on something that makes a huge difference. But they arm us with that.
And with that, it's a wrap. Thank you for attending. Much appreciate you taking the time. And we will see you at FCA Hawaii.
Yes.